Hello everybody. In this video we are going to discuss the second part of Keeping Quiet by Pablo Neruda. In the first part we discussed up to fishermen and the salt gatherer, that how our activities are harming the nature and harming ourselves. Now in this stanza, in this part, we are going to discuss that what happens when the realization dawns upon us, when after introspection we come to know, we come to realize that what our activities are resulting into. So let's see how all that has been conveyed. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gaze, wars with fire, victory with no survivors. So here the poet says green wars. Green wars means about deforestation, that we are cutting trees, deforestation is going on, human activities are resulting into the creation of desert lands. So that's about green wars. Moreover, it also gives a hint to say global warming, greenhouse effect. So all that is included in this green wars. And wars with gaze, wars with fire. So we have developed so many deadly and dangerous weapons. We have atomic bombs, we have hydrogen bombs, and it can be like we can destroy the countries, we can destroy the world in a very short time. So that's what the poet is trying to suggest here, that wars with gaze, wars with fire, victory with no survivors. Now it means that we may have such deadly and dangerous weapons, we may have nuclear weapons and missiles, but what is the use? What is the use if war happens? One side may be happy that they have won, but the other moment or the next time it may be they themselves. So this happiness, this joy is momentary. It's transient. It doesn't last. Wars lead on to wars. It leaves only cries and wails and laments in its wake. Nothing remains, only casualties and injuries and cries. So what is the use of gaining that momentary happiness when it's not going to last? So that's why he says victory with no survivors. You may have victory, but who will be there to enjoy that victory? Who will survive? It only will generate the feeling of revenge. So once such feelings are there is no end to wars. One stops, the other begins. So that's why it's of no use. And he says, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shed. So when after introspection, after meditation, people will come to realize, people will come to know that these are all useless, and so they would put on clean clothes. So this denotes the importance of peace. That means people will understand the importance of peace and harmony, and they won't engage themselves in wars. So would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers. So brothers means, the poet here suggests that the feeling of brotherhood will be there in the shade, doing nothing. So walk about with their brothers in the shade, it means people then understand the importance of harmony and amity. A feeling of brotherhood and fraternity will prevail. People will understand that there is no use creating enemies and having the feeling of hostility. We are all brothers and sisters, and we should understand the importance of such relations and such amity, and the fellow feeling should prevail. The amity should reign supreme, harmony should reign supreme. So there should be no bloodshed, there should be no wars. And further, he says, what I want should not be confused with total inactivity. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Why? Because he says life is what it is about. Life is what it is about. So the poet wants to say that by introspection and meditation, he doesn't mean that we should keep away all the things, we should keep aside all our activities and tasks and then should totally be lost in meditation and introspection. No. He doesn't want us to be totally inactive. He doesn't want us to be lazy or indolent. No. Because life is what it is about. Because there should be liveliness in our life. There should be some action, there should be some meaning, there should be some purpose in our life. Because without that, life is nothing. So life is what it is about. It should have a meaning, it should have a purpose. I want no truck with death. So the poet doesn't want us to be like death in life. He doesn't want us to be a burden on this earth, that we live a life or we lead a life like a dead person. What's the use of leading such a life like a burden on this earth? Is that a human being? No. If we have got this life, it should be made meaningful. And so he says, if we were not so single-minded, if we were not so single-minded, about keeping our lives moving, about keeping our lives moving. So the poet means to say that if we were not so single-minded, it means we are single-minded, we are selfish, we are caught in the cell of self, we are trapped, we are egocentric, we are egomaniac. So if we can come out of this self, if we can come out of this feeling of selfishness, because he says we only think of what? Keeping our lives moving. We only think of our own progress and our own advancement. We don't think of the others, we don't think of our society, we don't think of the people who are connected with us, or we don't have the feeling that we are connected with the society and others are also connected with us. And so we have only one thought in our mind, that is we. only our progress, anyhow, by hook or by crook, in any way, we only want our progress. We don't have that long vision that we should have a coordinated and cooperative living coexistence. The principle of coexistence doesn't come to our mind. And so we have that narrow vision of life. And he says, for once, could do nothing. A huge silence. A huge silence might interrupt the sadness of never understanding ourselves. So, the poet means, for once, if we can stop our activities, for once, if we can be still and meditate and think, then in that huge silence, the silence that would prevail then and there, so in that silence, we'll understand why we are sadness. Why there is sadness in our life. Because the poet says sadness is there because of never understanding ourselves. It means people don't understand themselves, and that's why they are sad. They don't know what their abilities are. They don't know what their capacity and what their skills are, and they, without knowing themselves, they choose their careers and professions, and what they are in depression, which is the usual problem of the people today. So he wants us to know that there is no need to be sad in our life. We all know that joys and sadness are part of our lives, that this is a cyclic process. If today it is joy, tomorrow there will be sadness. And if today it is sadness, tomorrow it will be joy. So we know this thing very well, but still when a problem comes into our life, we become sad and we just cling to that, thinking that it will never go away from our life. But is that so? These sadness and these sorrows are not permanent. They are to go and they must go. So why then people become so much sad? Why there is sadness in our life? Why can't we accept it normally? Why can't we take it as it comes? Why can't we face it as part of life which has to go away? But no. We human beings have become such because we don't think. We don't know ourselves. We don't think about ourselves. So if we spare time and think of life, think of ourselves, then perhaps we don't have to be sad anymore in our lives. And he says, of threatening ourselves with death. And of threatening ourselves with death. So, people are afraid of death, but do we not know that death is the ultimate truth? It is inevitable. it has to be there and it will be there, then why there is fear of death? One has to face it someday. But people have entangled themselves in so many things in their life that they are afraid of this ultimate truth. But the poet wants us to know and realize that there is no need to be afraid of this. One day it has to come. One day we have to face it. So be ready for it anytime. So why keep that fear in mind for death? Be normal about it. Have a normal life without any fear of death. Because even if we fear, it will be of no use. On the contrary, it will do harm to our life. We won't be able to live or enjoy our life. So there should be no fear, and it won't be there if we just spare some time for ourselves. And he says, perhaps the earth can teach us. Perhaps the earth can teach us, because when everything seems dead, later proves to be alive. So there are certain things that we can learn from this earth. And what is that? He says, when everything seems dead, later proves to be alive. So this earth is revolving. This earth is rotating, and we don't realize. That means there can be activity even in stillness. This rushing and running, this physical engagement is not everything. We can be creatively, innovatively, constructively engaged. That's what the earth teaches us. That's what the poet wants us to learn from this earth. And one more thing, that this earth never stops. Never stops for anything. That whether there is joy or celebration, or there is death or sorrow or destruction, whatever happens, it goes on and on and on. So that is quite an important thing to be learned from this earth, that we should also keep on moving. Whatever comes, whether joy or sorrow, that has to go, and we also have to go. If we cling to that if any joyous moment comes to our life and we cling to that, how can we move? How can we progress? How can we advance? And if some sorrow comes to us and we cling to that, again the same thing our life will be stagnant. Our life will be dull and dreary. So we need to keep on moving, because keep moving is life, advancing is life, progressing is life. Sticking to a place make us dead. It make us dead, and we are then no more a human being. So now, after explaining all these things and preparing us for that moment of introspection, the poet says, now I'll count to 12 and you will all keep still and I will go. So here the poet means to say that all these things that we discussed in this poem, this is what we come to know when we introspect. So this is the importance of introspection. We all need to know ourselves. We all need to know all these things, because Otherwise, we'll lead a dead life, we'll lead a meaningless life. So, to have a meaningful life, we must know ourselves. So, that's all about Keeping Quiet by Pablo Neruda. Thank you very much for watching this video. Next poem in the next video.